A coffee maker gurgles out its last drop. Steam curls over an empty mug. No one drinks it. Not because they stepped out. Not because they're running late. Because there is no one left. Not one person out of 8 billion to lift that cup to their lips. No flash in the sky. No final broadcast crackling into static. No warning at all. One moment humanity is here. The next, gone. Every hand, every voice, every heartbeat vanished between 2 ticks of a clock. And Earth didn't even flinch. Somewhere right now, in a control room lit by monitors nobody is reading, a single number is quietly becoming the most important statistic in human history. How many hours of backup power are left? Here's what you'd assume happens first. Reactors melt down. Cities burn. Some dramatic Hollywood-grade catastrophe, all within the hour. You'd be wrong. In the first 60 seconds, nothing looks wrong yet. Cars roll to a stop mid-lane, engines still running. No one behind the wheel. Phones keep buzzing with notifications nobody will ever read. Planes on autopilot hold their headings, obedient and patient, waiting for instructions that are never coming. Hour 6. 600 coal and gas plants worldwide are still burning, feeding on fuel stockpiles that don't know their operators are gone, like a body still breathing after the brain has shut off. But automation only stretches so far. Sensors trip, safety cutoffs fire. Turbines that once spun in perfect rhythm start to stutter, and when one grid goes down, it drags its neighbors with it. Within 6 hours, entire regions go dark. Not with an explosion, with a click. Hour 12. 440 nuclear reactors scattered across the planet do the one thing they were engineered never to fail at. They scram. Control rods slam down. Fission stops. But stop doesn't mean safe. Spent fuel keeps cooking on residual heat for years, and right now, the only thing standing between that heat and disaster is diesel, backup generators running on borrowed time. Every generator has a fuel gauge. Every gauge is dropping. Somewhere inside 40 different containment buildings, a warning light built to page a technician blinks patiently into an empty room. Hour 24. The quieter apocalypse begins. Not fire, water. London runs 40 pumping stations just to keep the underground from becoming a river. New York, Tokyo, same deal. These are cities built below the waterline, kept dry only by machines nobody thinks about until the machines stop thinking. New York's tunnels alone swallow something like 13 million gallons of groundwater a day. Every single gallon of it was always trying to get back in. Now, nothing's stopping it. The first true domino isn't a reactor core. It's water, finding its way back into every hole we ever dug to keep it out. Humanity's real, unglamorous job on this planet was never building. It was bailing. And the second the bailing stopped, that's the moment the flood really began. 10 days out, and the silence has a smell now. Refrigerated aisles in 10 million grocery stores have gone warm and started to turn. The cold chain that used to keep a planet fed collapses in about a week. And the smell of that collapse is the first proof that civilization's plumbing has actually stopped. Behind 100 million locked doors, house pets become the first casualties nobody warns you about. Small breeds, cats trapped on the wrong side of a flap door, starve in days, not weeks. But the bigger breeds, the ones with the muscle to shoulder through a rotting door or a cracked window, Get out. And out there, hunger doesn't check breed standards. Golden retrievers, German shepherds. Within a few months, Good Boy gets quietly rewritten by evolution into something with a lot more teeth, running in packs down empty avenues.
Meanwhile, the diesel clocks from Act 1 hit 0.
Spent fuel cooling ponds, pools 40 feet deep, built to keep decades of nuclear waste from cooking, start running dry. Not one dramatic mushroom cloud, just a slow boil, then steam, then no water left at all, and the fuel underneath finally does what physics always wanted it to do. Radioactive fires flare across dozens of sites worldwide. Dozens of invisible circles get drawn onto the map, places that will outlast every civilization that comes after us. But not everything is dying. Rats don't wait for a funeral to start a feast. Grain silos and food courts built to serve 8 billion people are suddenly all you can eat for a much smaller guest list. Raccoons figure out door handles faster than most tourists figure out subway maps. Overhead, red-tailed hawks and peregrine falcons, birds that already treated skyscraper ledges like cliff faces, watch the rat population explode and treat it exactly like what it is. Room service. It won't last. Without anyone ever restocking a shelf again, the feast runs dry fast, and the population boom that follows our disappearance will crash almost as quickly as it began. But not yet. For this one wild, chaotic season, the animal kingdom throws the biggest, messiest party this planet has seen since the last time something wiped out the species running the place. Fast forward. Year 1 becomes year 5 becomes year 10. And here's a number that should terrify every architect who ever lived. A 2,000-year-old Roman seawall is still holding just fine. Your local parking garage might not survive to its 40th birthday. How does something built with hand tools outlast something built with lasers? Start with winter. An empty building doesn't run its heating, so water finds every crack it can. And when it freezes, it doesn't just sit there. It expands, roughly 9%, with enough force to split solid rock. Do that every winter, in every pipe and joint and hairline fracture on the planet, and you've got a world quietly demolishing itself, one freeze-thaw cycle at a time. But the real answer to that Roman seawall question isn't ice. It's iron. Roman concrete was just lime, volcanic ash, and rock. Nothing metal buried inside it, nothing to rust. Modern concrete cheats. It's cheaper and faster to pour because it leans on a steel skeleton hidden inside it. Rebar, doing the real heavy lifting. And steel has exactly one weakness that water has always known how to find. Rust doesn't just weaken steel, it swells it, up to 4 times its original size, from the inside out. Concrete can survive being crushed from the outside. It was never built to survive being exploded from within. Beam by beam, column by column, the skeleton tears its way out through the skin. That's why a Roman ruin outlives a shopping mall. The Romans never gave the rust anything to grab onto. There's a specific sound concrete makes right before it finally lets go. A low groan, then a crack, sharp enough to sound almost deliberate. Nobody's left to hear it. That doesn't make it any quieter. Down at street level, the same war is being fought in miniature. A single weed finds a hairline crack in a parking lot, and its roots do exactly what water already taught concrete to fear. They push, patiently, every season, until asphalt that once carried 1 million cars a year splits open like old skin.
Above ground, Roofs go first. Waterproof membranes cook under UV rays until they crack, and every crack is an open invitation. Wind carries in seeds, birds carry in the rest, along with exactly the fertilizer you'd expect. Give it 10 years, and the top floor of what used to be a $100 million penthouse is a hanging garden, moss on marble, roots pushing up through Italian tile, doing precisely what a foundation was built to prevent. And somewhere, always, lightning is still striking the way it always has. Except now, there's no fire department racing the clock. No sprinkler system with anyone monitoring the alarm. One strike, one dry summer night, and an entire suburb of wood frame houses can burn block by block until the rain decides to stop it, because nothing else will. Neighborhoods that took developers 18 months to build take one August night to erase.
Jump ahead again. 1 century. Long enough for the loudest structures on the planet to finally lose their argument with gravity. High-tension suspension cables were engineered brilliantly, but brilliance has an expiration date without maintenance. Paint scrapes off in the wind, grease dries to dust. Bare steel finally meets 100 years of open air, and wire by wire, a cable built to hold 10,000 tons starts failing quietly from the inside, until the day it can't hold 10,000 pounds. When a bridge like that finally goes, it doesn't creak a warning first. Half a mile of engineering drops into the water in under 30 seconds. A sound that would have been unbearable if there'd been anyone left for it to be unbearable to. Downstream, something worse has been building the entire time. Every dam on Earth has been quietly filling with silt since the day it was finished. Mud and rock a river used to carry out to sea, now trapped behind 100 million tons of concrete instead. No engineers left to dredge it. No spillway gates opening on command. Eventually, a wall built to hold back a lake can't hold back a lake and a mountain of sediment too. When mega dams like Hoover or Three Gorges finally fail, they don't leak. They erupt, sending walls of water down valleys that haven't seen a real flood since before those dams were even poured. Land that spent a century as farmland or forest becomes riverbed again in a single afternoon. And in the cities, the skyline is failing its final inspection. Steel frames warp unevenly as decades of rust and freeze-thaw pull them in directions no architect ever drew. Glass panels, thousands of them, sealed into frames now bending out of true, start popping loose, raining down in sheets, sometimes for no reason a human would have ever caught coming. One by one, the towers that used to define entire skylines begin to fold. The tallest go first. They always had the most weight betting against them, and gravity was always going to collect. Not from an explosion, from 100 years of nobody checking if the bolts were still tight. Here's the part that should really keep you up tonight. Steel rusts. Glass shatters. Concrete crumbles. Everything we were so proud of turns out to have only ever been borrowed. Earth was just calling in the loan. So if none of it survives, not the steel, not the glass, not even the road under your feet right now, what's actually going to be left 1,000 years from now to prove any of us were ever here at all?
1,000 years. Long enough that city stops being a meaningful word for what's left. Forests don't creep back slowly anymore. They've already arrived, fully grown, indifferent, growing straight through what used to be intersections. Somewhere under all that green,
A 6-lane highway has been pressed flat by 1,000 years of leaf litter and rain, compacted into a thin black stripe a few centimeters thick. A fossil now, no different in principle from a seam of coal, just younger. Any geologist who ever finds that stripe in the rock will know exactly what it means. Something here used to move, fast, in straight lines, on purpose. Step back from the geology for a second, because the bigger picture is almost impossible to describe without sounding like a myth. Rivers that were straightened, dammed, and poured into concrete channels have carved their own paths back, wide, braided, alive. Coral reefs that were bleaching white 1,000 years ago have color in them again. Entire cities of fish moving through what used to be a warning sign. Herds move through old highway interchanges the way they once moved through open plains, because to an elk or a bison, a cracked 6-lane overpass buried under soil isn't a ruin. It's just ground. Birdsong fills valleys that spent centuries under traffic noise, and for the first time in 10,000 years, there's no engine, no chainsaw, no jet overhead to compete with it. The planet was never struggling to recover. It was only ever waiting for us to stop being in the way. But the highway isn't the real headline.
Here's what actually survives. Buried in landfills and ocean sediment, where there's no oxygen left to help anything rot. Stainless steel, barely touched, because chromium doesn't rust the way plain iron does. Refined titanium, practically eternal, pulled from ore that took the planet billions of years to concentrate in the first place, and it is not interested in going back. Gold, sitting inside 1,000 collapsed jewelry boxes, unchanged, because gold has never once cared about oxygen. And plastic, trillions of fragments pressed into anaerobic seafloor mud, chemically stubborn enough to outlast the pyramids. But the strangest artifact of all isn't buried, it's leaving. Every television broadcast, every radio signal humanity ever fired into the sky is still out there, expanding at the speed of light, a sphere of our accidental noise, over 1,000 light-years wide by now, and growing every second, whether or not there's anyone left inside it to keep transmitting. Long after the last skyscraper folds and the last highway turns back into rock, that sphere keeps going. It is, and it will remain, the only part of us still actively moving through the universe. We spent 10,000 years convinced we were building something permanent. Cities, empires, skylines that scrape the clouds. Turns out, permanence was never the plan. We were just really good at holding entropy at arm's length, one pump, one generator, one maintenance crew at a time. The moment we let go, the planet didn't destroy what we built. It just remembered how to breathe without us.